Hello, class and everyone else. I'm Professor Tweed, and in this video we're going to look at fun illusions. Now, you might be thinking, like, am I just trying to get views? Well, yeah, I sort of am. But the reality is I actually use these illusions a lot in class, especially when I'm talking about color and color theory. So all these illusions will deal with color. And I want to say I do have some other videos on color theory, which you might find enjoyable to watch. The links of those will be in the descriptions. But the reason why I like to use illusions as well is because I really think they do several things for us. First, it allows me to get students' attention. Hopefully it got your attention as well. But also, more importantly, it allows me to talk about human perception. And understanding human perception is important to making great designs and making great drawings. So the first one I want to start with is this. And I know what you might be thinking, which is, oh no, not this again. Because that's exactly what my students say every time I put this slide up here on the screen. But inevitably, it doesn't take very long before they start to argue about what color this dress is. It never gets old. So what color do you think this dress is? Now, in case you haven't seen it, this came out several years ago, went viral several years ago. And some people think that this dress looks black and blue, while others see it as white and gold. Interestingly enough, when this came out, I woke up one morning when it first came out. I saw it in my feeds, and I saw it as blue and black, and I'm like, I'm working on a video on color right now. I'm going to give it later in the week. I've got to put this into my presentation. So I went to school, opened up the PowerPoint slide, threw it in. I'm like, wait a second, this dress now looks white and gold. And ever since then, the dress has looked white and gold to me. Interesting enough, I think no matter what color you think the dress is, I think everyone can generally see or generally knows that actually the dress is actually grays and browns. Like, I know that's the pixel color, even though my brain interprets those colors differently. And so what's going on here, what people think is happening is that your brain is making some assumptions about the lighting quality. There's not a lot of background information, so it's got to make a lot of those assumptions. And if you think the light is blue, then the dress is probably white. And what's happening is the blue light is being reflected off the white, and that's why you're seeing it that color. So your brain makes that assumption, says, oh, that dress is white. Alternatively, your brain might think that the lighting is yellow. And the thing about yellow light is it doesn't have any blue in it at all. So what it's going to do, it's totally going to gray out or white out anything. Yellow light will white out or gray out anything that's blue. So if you think that color is yellow, it grays it out, and you're just, oh, that must be blue because the yellow is light, and so therefore I can't see that color. Here's the real color from the manufacturer. It is blue and black. I know this. I still don't see the dress this way. My mind interprets it as gray and gold, and you may or may not as well. But we can use this principle in our drawings. In fact, I have it. So I want to show you this set drawing here. This is the drawing. This is the finalized version of the drawing. It's a drawing at sunrise or sunset. I have this very yellow-orange sky and this house. And now this house is intended to be in tones of blue. But what you'll really notice, because the lighting is implied to be yellow and orange, we can tell that by the sky, I've actually had to gray out the building because there's no blue light in the lighting that I'm representing, so it's very difficult for blue to be seen. And so I have to let the eye, in the brain make that assumption internally and gray out the drawing. And I'll show you what I mean through a series of transformations away from this original work. So right here what I have is I have the blue of the building that might be seen during the day, but against this yellow sky. And when you see it, almost looks too bright. It looks awkward. It almost looks like it's glowing or something's going on. Perhaps another interpretation could be that there's a light somewhere else that's a white light that's shining on the building that allows it to reflect the blue. But in any event, it's then brighter or more glowing than the rest of it because that can't happen under just the yellow sky. So you have to artificially fake it. That said, now I'm just animating. I'm just changing the sky color. I have not changed the color of the building at all. It's just the pure blue color, and we see that it looks less bright. It looks more natural, like it should fit, and that's because the lighting quality has changed, and our brain is making the assumption that, yes, this works. Now this blue makes sense. Alternatively, I could do this animation, which is just going back to the original gray color. So I've kept the blue sky, but I've changed the color of the building, and now the building is unquestionably gray because that's what the color is. And since I have full spectrum lighting going on in this drawing, then the color must be what I see. It's a gray building. All right, and so one last transformation here. It's just the sky that's changing. I haven't changed the house. And we go back to the original drawing. And again, this could be a blue building in yellow light, which is what it's intended. So when you're making sunset, sunrise drawings, you really might have to think about lighting quality and how that's going to reflect on the design that you're making. All right, so let's look at another fun illusion. This one, quite honestly, is not all that different. It deals, of course, with color. We have a pink square here, and the pink square has two brown squares within it. And the question is, what colors do you think those brown squares are, or how do you relate to each other? Of course, it's an illusion. Most people see the mind as the one on the side as being brighter than the one up top. Again, this is an illusion, so obviously that's not going to be true. In fact, if I draw a brown rectangle through my drawing, we can start to see that they are indeed the same color. It becomes even more obvious when I remove the shadow from the drawing. In fact, the darkening of the color, which is implying shadow, makes the brain make a lot of assumptions. And these are the same colors, because I didn't change any of those browns, but what's happening, the brain says, well, if those pixels are actually projecting the same true color, then the one that's in shadow, since it's in shadow, it must be brighter, because the only way for something to be enshadowed and be the same as something that's not is that it must inherently be brighter or it must be glowing. Your brain makes that assumption. You can't not see it. Right? So I think that's such a fun illusion that really gets to color, really gets to shadow, which are so important when making drawings. And so here's the original illusion again, but we can specifically do this right within architectural drawings, right? So here we go. We've got this drawing here, which again is similarly, again, sunrise or sunset. There's lots of dark colors, but one of the differences with this rendering is I've used a lot of brighter colors at the windows to make them look like they're glowing and it's warm and welcoming, right? And it's just based on this effect, which is a color next to a darker color, a color that's in shadow but looks bright must be really bright, must be really glowing. Because when we actually look at the colors independently, we can see it's sort of a pale brown color, and if I actually take the drawing away entirely so we can just see the colors naturally, they aren't really that bright yellow, they aren't really that bright at all. Even the one on the bottom there, it's sort of a brownish color, but yet we still perceive it as glowing because it's hey, if it's in shadow, it must be glowing. I've tricked the brain and I've used that illusion directly in the drawing. It's not the only way to look at shadows and illusions and how they relate to drawings. This one's also pretty fun. The first question I have here, and this one's not a trick question yet, is how do these cubes, these pink cubes, relate to each other, or in space, how do they sit? And it's pretty straightforward. The one on the right sitting on the ground, the one over here sort of floating and a little bit up, twisted around over there, the one in the middle sort of in the middle, and we know that perfectly fine. And then I can ask again, just make a quick animation on this one. We can do the same question, not a trick question. How do these cubes relate to in space? Pretty straightforward. This one's closer to me, that one's further away, this one's in the middle, all well and good. But here's the thing. These cubes the pink cubes never actually moved. It was all based on shadow, or the darkening of color, that tricked your mind into placing those into different locations. And sort of, I'll prove that here, because what I'll do is I'll just quickly trace out these cubes. There's one. Sorry, I'm doing this a bit quickly. Just stretch way over there. Okay, how does that look? Can you see that? Yeah, you can sort of see that. All right, so watch this. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to transform back to the first set, right? So there's the cubes where they're rising in the air. We can see with my black marker those pink cubes didn't change, and I can go all the way, I can flip back to this one. Again, we can see the cubes did not change. They are exactly where I put my markers, and it's all based on shadows. So give me a second while I erase this. So of course shadows are hugely important with architectural renderings, and that's what that previous illusion was meant to show. So here we've got an elevation of the house we've been looking at a couple times in this video. It's just an architectural rendering with line works. I just made the gray tone just to offset a little bit against the white, but other than that, it's just black lines with line weights, as you might see in an architectural set. Perfectly fine. It represents the building well, but you know, it can certainly be better. So if I transform it to this view here, what I have here is just the drawing with just shadows. I've taken off the lines. Now certainly some details about the building are lost because I don't have the lines, but there's actually a lot more information here that's almost more important because I put the shadows on, and the design intent of this building was really to make a house with a few different forms that interacted in three-dimensional space. And you don't get that from just the lines, but when I turn the shadows on, perfectly visible, and it starts to read architecturally the way I want it to. Now I can make one more change to this drawing, and I can add color to it to sort of render it up a little bit. Now this drawing still doesn't have lines, it only has colors and it has shadows. And at this point in time, with just color and shadow, which is just a darkening of color, of course, you can read pretty much everything you need to read about the building. And I'm able to control, it reads three-dimensionally, even though it's a two-dimension drawing. Now what I want to say is don't worry about the fact that I changed the colors of the house. Just ignore that. So there's one more thing I want to look at, one more illusion. It sort of sums everything up. It's much more subtle. It might not even be an illusion, but I also think it's very interesting. So right now up on screen I just have a cube. The one thing I want you to pay subtle attention to is what I have here is sort of yellow lighting, warm lighting, lighting like that might come from the sun. And what you'll notice is that the shadow is a slightly blue in color, which happens if you're willing to look at it, if you're willing to look closely. I can do the alternative. There's a very subtle shift in animation here where I change the color to more of bluish color, and the shadows then begin to look more red or more orange in color. And you may have difficulty seeing it, but it's something you can use in drawings, as I'll show in a minute. But I do want to tell a quick story because I knew many artists use bluish shadows for their work because it gives the feeling of a warm sun. But many years ago when my son was very small, we're walking down the street and he's like, "Hey Dad, why is my shadow not blue anymore?" I'm like, "Oh, your shadow has colors?" "Yeah, like sometimes it's blue, sometimes it's yellow. Right now it doesn't have any color." What's happening is many street lights at night, they use metal halide lamps which produce almost a pure yellow glow, and that really warm yellow light can trick the eye into thinking that the gray that's the shadow is actually a blue, just like that first "what color is your dress" thing we were looking at. And he was so young, he was just going with what his mind thought he saw, and he was saying, "Hey, this happened to be yellow over there, my shadow's blue, over there was yellow," so on and so forth. It was really fascinating. Now he's only a few years older now, but I think he's sort of lost that. He's sort of indoctrinated now into what shadow color should be, as in black or gray. But it's really fascinating that your brain does have that subtlety about it that I think we can use to our advantage. And making drawings will ultimately feel warmer. And I want to show you an example here. So here's this house again in a perspective. In this case, right now there's no shadows on this drawing, and that's where I just wanted to start. Because of course the first lesson, shadows, super important. I'll just put them on right there. We can see it immediately adds three-dimensional quality to this. It makes the architecture really read. Right now the shadows are just a gray tone, right? This as well. So the first step here I'm going to do is I'm just going to subtly change the shadows to have a bluish tint. I think that starts to make the drawing look a bit more interesting, a bit more welcoming, but we can even take this one step further. And what I'm going to do now is I just add a little bit of yellow, warm colored lighting spots, and really just adds a richness to this drawing, enhances the shadows, and the shadow color and that lighting color really help enhance each other to make this a warm, welcoming, inviting drawing. A computer is not going to do this for you. A computer doesn't see the sun as being warm. It doesn't see shadows in different colors because it has no brain that's interpreting. But you can take control of your own work and make those enhancements in Photoshop. Very easy to do, and make fantastic drawings from there by using these illusions. So that's all I have to say for today. But thanks for watching. And while you wait for the next video, keep making great drawings. Keep making great designs. Oh, I could not help myself with setting up this recording infrastructure. It's just so easy to get this reoccurring process down on the screen, which I just find so mesmerizing. I had to do some recording. So I'm just recording the TV screen and feeding it back on itself to get this. In fact, I can just sort of move this back a little bit here in my studio. So there I am. Hi me, hi me, hi me, hi me. I don't know. I find it fun.